Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
First up is the TTR newsletter. If you haven't subscribed yet, there is a weekly newsletter called Soundbites and Insights. It currently goes to 10,000 educators a week. It's curated of 4 of the top standout TTR shows from the week. It has exclusive discounts, offers from sponsors. So you can sign up at the website ttradio.org/newsletter. And a big thank you to our partners, John Catt Educational, who are publishers of professional development books and resources, supporting great teaching and learning around the world. So if you want to have a look at some of the fantastic resources, John Catt, JOHNCATT, bookshop.com for all the titles, and there's an exclusive discount code, JCTTR2425 for 20% off.
Great. So I guess you've already done the introduction, haven't you? Should we just get into it?
I've just set the tone that ultimately you're coming from a secondary perspective in this, and I'm coming from a primary perspective, and ever the two shall disagree on this issue, I reckon. But quite often we, as primary educators, see our year sixes going off to secondary, and they are full with so much knowledge that we've been working on with them. And then, funnily enough, the fact that most secondary schools have quite a range of feeder primaries means that not all children have the same knowledge, and not all children are confident to the same level nor retain that. There's obviously totally different expectations for what teaching looks like at secondary, which seems to mean, in some ways, what it feels to us at primary is that you have to start again. And that's where the frustration comes from. Is that true? Is that a myth? What would you suggest?
Wow, it's just like you say, you've got, day one, year 7, you've got 30 kids sitting in front of you, and they're all different places. They're all at different places. I mean, you've obviously got the different places that they had within their feeder schools, within their classes at the feeder schools. And then you've got the different places that you've got when they come from different feeder schools. So it's a challenge, let's say that. And the temptation is to go, well, they haven't learned anything, have they? Do you know, that's the temptation as a secondary school teacher. We go from doing something. See, this is the thing, Claire. Like I have worked in a through school before. And so I don't know whether we're going to disagree too heavily.
Was it any better?
Yeah. Because look, I designed the chemistry curriculum from year 6 through to year 13. Imagine that, right? And I totally see like how we get there. And we had our own prep school science team involved in teaching science, and we had prep school maths teams who worked heavily hand in hand with the secondary department. And then I got involved in teaching some year 6 science as well, and did a bit of year 5, and went and saw year 5 lessons, and kind of got to get, do you know, so actually I don't think I've got an appreciation of what it looks like when it happens well.
Did you have other children joining you in year 7, or
no,
were your year 7s all from your year 5, 6 kind of?
No, they moved through. It was a fee-paying school, so they moved through. They moved through. It was abroad as well, so it's a fee-paying school abroad, and they moved through. And that was quite an interesting thing, because I was like, look, number one, designing a curriculum through from year 6 to year 13 was beautiful. It's like, here you go, mate. Like, get these kids to where you need them to be. Like, if you want the top grade in year 13, think about what they need to do from year 6 all the way through, or year 5 all the way, because I had a hand in that as well.
And so that's what we do when they start year 3, right? When they come up to us in Key Stage 2 from Key Stage 1, sometimes that in different school. For us, it's I've only ever worked in full primary. It's not infancy. But effectively, you see that as a 4-year Key Stage 2 journey. And more, I think people are seeing, especially, how do we get them to the expectation of where we want them in maths and English, reading and writing at year 6? Well, that needs to start in year 3, because we need to be building those blocks up developmentally. We can't just wait until year 5 even, or year 6, to suddenly expect them to learn all this new knowledge.
Yeah, that's it. And it's just damn stressful. It's like really, it's really stressful, right? Trying to get kids to do that at the end. So it's really cool to have that kind of build and see the appreciation and know and think about what they kind of where they were building from as well in the curriculum. And then obviously I've come to a UK school where that we've got, you know, several feeders. We've got like 4 or 5 feeders to our school.
Yeah.
And you can see the difference between where they come from. You know,
Yeah.
you can definitely see the difference. Number one, you can see the difference in terms of the pastoral support and the standards that they come with. I'm not knocking any of our feeder schools,
Yeah.
but you can see that they've got different expectations and different kind of standards in terms of what they think is reasonable. And then you can also see the difference in knowledge as well. But also the other thing is you've got that, like, look, because a secondary takes a bigger catchment, doesn't it, than a primary. So the other thing is you've got all the different like gaps, like when you look at it, it accentuated in your classrooms. So that you can tell. Do you know what I mean? You can tell which is the gap school, and people go, oh well, that school is in that location, higher level of affluence, and so then they come through and they're just, you know, generally more knowledgeable and etc. So like, look, all the research suggests it doesn't do the disadvantaged any favors when they come through, and transition isn't effectively done. And I think what we see is the amplification of that in a secondary school. Like in a second, and you can probably see it when you come from nursery setting into key stage 1 as well, right? Yeah, like the different
No,
style.
you're right, because we're doing that right now. We know where our children are coming from. They're coming from a range of different settings, and we absolutely know which settings have got the right SEND support in place, and who will come with the funding that they need, and who have had a really settled start, and who have never left their parents or never been to any setting, and the difference it's going to make, and what their transition into school is going to look like. So absolutely, we see it at the other end of school, and maybe we underestimate that. But the advantage we've got is that first year they are continuing the early years foundation stage, but we can just meet them where they are. And because so much of it is play based, actually that's okay. You can quickly catch on with what they're doing, and then they are all in not the same place, but you have that understanding where they are before they start the kind of key stage 1 curriculum.
Yeah, and age plays a game there as well, because you've got the developmental state. You got, you know, the stuff just isn't developed in the like the areas of the brain aren't developed at that point. Yeah, so but when they get to us, we don't have those excuses. so I think it's quite an interesting one. Look, from me, when it comes to it, I would love transition to be better. I think it does need to be better. I think sometimes we underestimate what you guys have done with them in primary. I think massively. Secondary teachers also think compartmentally.
Okay.
Like really, you do. You compartmentalize your subject. You live in your subject.
Yeah.
Like, and it's you know, you just don't have the capacity. And like, if we go to the granular level, you know, I run a science department. I'd love to spend the time linking up with all the other subject leads and like sewing our curriculum together so it produces this lovely holistic framework. But let's face it, like, I've got so much time in my day, you know, and like a lot of it just has to be funneled into developing my department first. And then there's not a lot of time left to go and hang out with the PE guys and go, what are you teaching them in terms of the circulatory system? Do you know what I mean? There's not, there isn't that. And like, also, we don't sit around in like the just geographically, you sit around like, you know, around a table in a science department. Someone would be like, oh, you're doing this. And we had a curriculum discussion today. It was superb. It was really, really good for my department. And we were knocking ideas back and forth. You just can't do that. Like, you know, that's just happened. It happened there. I'm teaching this tomorrow. But it'd be wonderful to be able to do that with like PE colleagues and geography colleagues. And, you know, oh, you're teaching rocks. Why are you teaching rocks there? We do it there. Oh, well, you just leave that. We'll cut that in the curriculum. So then you amplify that to transition. Do you know what I mean? Because we're all doing the same job, aren't we?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so what would be fascinating is I feel the primary curriculum is overfull, that we're trying to cram too much knowledge into it. And that actually, if as part of the kind of curriculum review that's currently ongoing, we could do less better, we would get more children up to the expected standard. I'm not just talking reading, writing, I'm literally talking everything. And we could have more consistency across schools then. And if you had a situation where regardless of what feeder school the children were up, you would still obviously have that variation between children within schools, which you're always going to have. But actually, if you could be confident that a higher percentage of the children would come in with that expected knowledge, because we are doing less but better. And because I think part of what happens when you narrow it down and you're more subject specific is that you probably go a little bit deeper, if I'm honest.
I'd like to say that, but in
No?
science, it's really broad and like,
Okay.
this is the problem though. You say this, but like if you take the content out of primary, then someone might argue it has to go somewhere. I don't know, or you just
But
cut
then
it.
if you're doing it again, does that make any difference?
That's the
Like
issue.
if
And
they've got those basic building blocks of each subject really secure. So I'll use science because that's your kind of bread and butter. Like if when every child left primary, they had a really clear understanding of a fair test, what that means, what that looks like. They knew how to write up an investigation, and they knew how to they knew some basic facts about biology, chemistry, and physics that were the agreed national curriculum content, and it was a real solid baseline for where children came up to, and what we really genuinely thought was realistic, reasonable, and we'd still push other children, and other schools would just aim for that baseline. Would it make any difference at secondary?
Yeah, it would. It'd be massive. But like then, that I think what the issue is, because look, there's quite a lot of that in the Key Stage 2 national curriculum. It's funny that you brought this up because I have been doing some grappling with the Key Stage national curriculum with science, and a lot of it is in there. Do you know? It's just quite often the vocabulary used isn't uniform. Like I just like, you know, we moved away from like a codified national curriculum where like you kind of, you know, the old national strategies type thing. We got more broad curriculum statements. But I think that in essence, in some way, like that's led to us not really knowing what the kids are going to, you know, just the idea of that some people don't use the words fair test when they teach science. You know, like in maths, like there are different ways of like I don't have the knowledge here, but there's different ways of solving things, right? Do you know, like and like if that's inconsistent, then when we get them at secondary, oh right, yeah, well I'm going to say these words and I'm going to assume you know what I mean because I know the broad national curriculum statement says this, but actually the actual words I'm using may mean nothing to you because your primary teacher has used some different words, right?
But that feels so easy to solve, right?
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads. No distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. Eduflix.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy read.
Which would make a difference. Like if there genuinely was agreement at that level. And so here's an interesting one. I don't know how long you've been teaching in the UK. When I started teaching in primary, we had science SATs. Okay. So end of year 6, they did reading, writing, maths. I don't think we did grammar at that point, but we had science, right? And in some ways, they weren't ideal because some of the things that were put in those papers, it felt like the way the questions have been written were to catch children out, blah, blah. But what it did do was really raise the profile of science. It is a core subject at primary, right? We have core subjects and wider curriculum subjects, and science is a core subject. At that point when it was there, it was given, I don't know if maybe as much, but it was given more curriculum time than it is now, if I'm honest. Because schools were judged on their science SATs, as well as their maths and English. So there was a real kind of expectation that children needed to be able to do this and need to be able to answer certain questions in different ways.
Well,
I can't help but think the removal of that must have had an impact on science secondary.
Oh, hugely. There was like the Ofsted Science Report found it. I think there was an ASE report as well that found it. That's like when
my mum was working for ASE at the time.
Yeah,
so,
ASA or the Aspires. There was another report that found there's quite a few reports that have found the drop in science attainment due to the getting rid of the SAT. And look, when it came to, because I think I was on the back end of it. It was 15 years ago when I started, and I think they were just phasing out the SATs, and we still had the levels. And but you knew that if a child came in at like level 6 or level 5A or level 3A, you knew what sort of language they'd be using, because you'd be able to dip into like test space. Remember test space?
We still use test space.
Yeah, people still do. You could dip into test space and you could go, okay, what does the language look like around the mark scheme on this question? And you could then use that language and kind of tie it through. And then we got rid of that. And if I remember correctly, it was like objections to like, oh, well, we need the freedom to teach the curriculum we want, right? And things like that. That was what it was our profession that ended up kind of.
Oh no, I know, it was driven
putting
by
the nail in that coffin lid. And I found it really bizarre, because I really like the national strategies. Like, it's terrible, isn't it? It's terrible. But I quite like it.
We're going full circle. It won't be long until they're back.
Yeah,
doing the literacy review currently.
But I quite liked it. I quite liked that. I knew what to teach. I knew what language to use, and then that was that. Do you know what I mean? And the curriculum was codified, and then. But the issue was, it was so straight-jacketed that if I wanted to, like, maybe study like a non-metal, and I wanted to look at coal because I lived in Yorkshire, I couldn't do that. Do you know what I mean? I'd have to look at something London-based, because someone in London had written the curriculum. Do you know, and things like that. So I can appreciate that, but there's a happy medium somewhere. But yeah, codifying what we teach them through would be great. It'd be superb. Do you know? And bizarrely, like when I did some research, one of the things that came up was the BEST science curriculum, which is developed in York. And what they've done at the University of York is they've dovetailed the curriculum through. So essentially, they just kind of they map exactly where they've come from Key Stage 2 from the national curriculum, and then inform what you should teach afterwards based on that. And it's superb. It's really, really good. And it's like a really good hallmark of like how a curriculum should be designed. We use it. We've used it to inform our curriculum planning. And it's really bizarre. Someone from a primary background in training a couple of weeks ago said to me, oh, and are you teaching your kids stuff from Key Stage 2? Did you know solids, liquids and gases? They've already done it. And I was like, yeah, I did know that, because like the best curriculum like has shown us that. And I know that like if we follow that curriculum model, and it's not prescriptive, it is and it isn't, but it is granular how they've developed that curriculum. That doesn't exist in maths or English. But you've got SATs there, and I know it doesn't exist for geography or history or all these or PE or other subjects around there. Like I know it doesn't exist for those, because there just isn't enough. Like that we're lucky, because it like scientists are like, we need more science, and then someone goes off and does loads of research on it and then develops something amazing at the STEM Centre in York. We don't have that for other curriculums, and I think that's a major issue. You know, a codification and a dovetailing through using evidence as well, so that like quite often a curriculum that you get in a secondary school could just be what someone's ripped out of the last school, or even worse, like something that someone has written for a publisher who has never been into a primary school has written, and then just like written it, published it. It's good enough that the resource is there for a busy teacher at the end of the day to dip in and out of, and then suddenly a load of busy teachers to dip in and out of, and then suddenly we all start using this curriculum. Do you know what I mean? That's at worst. That's at worst what happens. Like, you know, like these curriculums aren't well thought through, but the publishers just managed to peddle it and managed to get it in and made it easy to use, so a teacher can literally whip out PowerPoint on Monday morning, go, yeah, we're doing this, and you somehow
there's been no thought there, has there? That's the key bit in the prior to picking up that PowerPoint and whacking it on with all the resources ready. That thinking of, right, how does this fit into what I know they already know, how it builds on what they've done previously, for this specific group of children in front of me, not just a generic middle set 9 or whatever they are.
Yeah. I mean, like, so what I do is I rely heavily on my prerequisite knowledge questions. So like I won't start teaching something unless I've asked like a load of prerequisite knowledge questions. That's just like become habit, because like I'm a bit of a Ausubel kind of like dieharder. Like I read like work of Ausubel and kind of done a bit of work around it. And so now I'm a bit like, I'm not gonna like just start. I want to tie this knowledge to other knowledge, right? So I always do prerequisite knowledge. But initially when I first started doing it, it's really hard to figure that out for year 7. Really hard. Like, you know, and I have to go and like look a little bit. I found a question bank from Key Stage 2.
Yeah.
And kind of went off that and kind of went in. What I found was the kids had not remembered a lot of it. So I think that's the other issue. Like you guys might have taught it, and I'm not, no one's to blame here, are they? You guys might have taught it. Yeah. The kids certainly haven't learnt it, because learning is a change in long-term memory, but they have received it. So you've taught, they've received. I'm not saying that.
And I think that for me is the issue with so much content. There is so much knowledge that to fit it all in their long-term memory is nigh on impossible because of their age and stage of development. And there's also that change of associating knowledge with certain places and things. Like, so sat in that room, in that when they've spent 6 weeks doing it, it's been built into their literacy, it's built in their geography or history. Like, in the context of what they're doing, it's there at that point in time when we're assessing it. But only the stuff they've kind of come back to a few times over the course of their primary career might really be learnt. And they're also then going into a totally different environment, especially in year 7, right? Where everything feels and looks so different. Like, even the pedagogical approach is so often so different that almost their capacity to retain, absorb, show what they know, because I bet there's also peer pressure at play here. Like, as they start to settle and feel comfortable and confident in that environment, to show what they have retained and what they know is another additional challenge, right?
But I mean, also, I don't know, like I said, it's no one's fault, right? However, like, if we haven't planned retrieval strategies and that knowledge is forgotten, like one might argue, what was the point in being in the room and spending an hour on that? Like, back then, right? Like, and so maybe it is not, I'm not blaming either colleague, primary or secondary, like I'm not pinning it on anyone, but maybe as primary and secondary colleagues, we should have factored into what we do, right? We should factor that retrieval process into what we do, like whether it be consistent across the 2 schools or not. At some point, like if you learn what solids, liquids and gases are in Key Stage 2, then you should have been asked enough times about it to remember it when you come to year 7, right? And I should enough, and then in year 7, I should ask you enough times about it so that you remember it in year 10. And then we don't have to, like, you know, I don't have to spend an hour on a lesson on solids, liquids and gases again when you've done it in Key Stage 2, but we haven't bothered to put a retrieval strategy in throughout. So I think that's the other issue. I think there's 2 things at play here. Number one, I don't think curriculum alignment is effective enough and codified enough. I think that's and I think you would agree with me there.
No, absolutely. It's, and we're not talking together, like from primary to secondary, to make that change together.
Together.
So that by the end of primary, we're teaching them and using strategies and ways of codifying, ways of kind of recalling that knowledge that is then similar, or at least familiar enough that when they go to secondary, they go, oh yeah, no, I've done this. I'm used to this. I'm comfortable with this. I know what this looks like. I know that I can recall the knowledge because this is the same. Because that would be so helpful.
It'd be awesome, wouldn't it? And it takes a bit of work. I did some AI stuff. I will talk to you about that in a second. The other day, but yeah, that'd be awesome, right? And we could work together as colleagues to make sure that's codified across. And I don't think it necessarily happens. It happens. It may, there might be listeners out there. Let us know if you are out there and this works really well in your school. We'd love to hear about it. Just like type in the chat window, and we'll get you on. But essentially, like this, maybe it happens really well in other feeder secondary schools, but it takes a significant amount of time. It really does. Just like I said, like I was really lucky at my school abroad where I've taught through, and I had loads of time as well. I had a 50% timetable. Can you believe that? And essentially,
I think that only backs up what Alan put in the chat message, which is basically the English school system for transition makes this harder. It's like stalling a car. Some drive up in a well-maintained vehicle, others are in a bit of a failed MOT rust bucket, and like ultimately, when we don't get it right, it just makes everything so much harder.
Yeah, it does. And look, for me to talk to a primary colleague, right, and go, right, I've got PPA period 1. And the primary colleague's like, what's a PPA? All right, well, I've got this like 1 hour where I get to like plan my lessons. I've got these 3 hours in my 25-hour week where I get to plan these lessons. And they're like, what? Well, I just have to look after kids all day. And then I can come at 3 o'clock, but my brain is going to be like putty. Like it's going to be coming out my nose. I just want to go home. I don't want to spend like, and you need energy to do curriculum alignment.
Yeah.
You need, there might be arguments to be had. There is like deep thinking to be done, and a primary colleague's not going to be doing that at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't think it's fair. Do you know? So that's really difficult. Like I think that's also the issue. So there must be some ways and means in our modern technology world where we can do that, and there's got to be a way of doing that and I am a bit of a process guy. There must be some way of like routinizing that for us so that it becomes easier to transition that content over and to align what we're doing. I was going to tell you about my AI.
Yeah, go on.
Thing. So actually, what I did was I bunged our curriculum statements into I won't say which one it is, but an AI platform which only uses the sources that you give it.
Okay.
And then essentially I also put in the Key Stage 2 national curriculum descriptors. Mm-hmm. And now what I do is I ask it questions about the alignment. So essentially, like before teaching sales, I go, what are they covered in Key Stage 2? And it'll pop up these questions. And I go, oh yeah, great. So that's what they're covered at Key Stage 2. Because actually mining that knowledge is really difficult as well. You don't have to do it. So now what I'm doing is I'm doing the front end thinking, but the AI is doing the legwork for me, and it's become superb at getting me to really think about how the curriculum at my school, science, dovetails with Key Stage 2. It's been superb. Like I can just literally go, well, I'm going to have to ask questions about this because that's what they've learned at Key Stage 2. So we're going to do a little retrieval on that first, and we're going to build from there. Like they built circuits. I asked it, like, what have they done on circuits? Oh, they build circuits. They know what bulbs and like batteries are and wires. You don't need to teach them that. Great. Like that's the end of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then essentially I just asked them questions on what bulbs, wires, circuits, batteries are, and we see where they're at on that. If I need to refresh their knowledge in it, I do. If not, then I just move on, and I can save myself an hour of time rather than going, this is a wire, and all the kids go, oh yeah, we remember what a wire is, sir. Why are we doing this? I could see the equipment in the corner. Let's just build one, sir, because I want to do that.
Well, that's right. There's a different way of retrieving that I think you'd get kids in year 7 to really show you really quickly. Have they remembered about circuits? Give them some bulbs, a battery, and some wires, and see. Because that's what we would do in primary, right? Yeah. Like, that's exactly where we would assess them at the end. We'd have a load of stuff and we'd put some random stuff that wouldn't work in there too, to see if they fall for it. But ultimately, that's how we'd start our electricity topic is, right, show me what you can do. And then by the end of it, we go, right, can you now do a simple circuit? Can you show me a parallel circuit? Because that's the kind of level that we want them to be at.
Yeah. So like that's the sort of thing. So but then with what's happened is this tool has allowed me to mine that documentation a lot more easily. Now imagine instead of the Key Stage 2 national curriculum, you're one of my feeder schools, I take your curriculum planning and bung that in there. I'm not having to trawl through your curriculum planning journey. I'll just ask the AI, which is only using your source information and my source information, and then we can see how the curricula dovetail together,
But
and we
even
can
if you
make
had
sure it's
6
smooth.
feeders, right?
Yeah,
You could literally give it those 6 and say, right, pull out what they've
yeah,
all got in common that they've done, what's slightly different, and
yeah,
help me identify what should be common prior knowledge for them.
yeah,
We've
yeah.
got to be using this technology smarter to do this.
How
Trish.
it'd be
Absolutely
mint, wouldn't it?
right.
And then suddenly your science curriculum like caters for all when they come, because like it's like I think it's been a brilliant way, and I say this about AI, you know, where we sometimes like people are a bit scared about it, right? I won't go into my thoughts on Ludditism in the profession, but we're a bit scared of it, and rightly so, because we're worried that this thing's going to do the thinking for us. But I think if we go into it like that, where we're doing the thinking, it's doing the lead work, especially with curriculum, then we could end up and with a very specific task. We're not going to get it to write a curriculum for us, right? That's mad. We should be writing our curriculum, but we are going to get it to analyze where there's like kind of discrepancies or similarities, because that takes ages. and I've never seen it done well. I remember like the primary head at my last school, like making this. It was a horrifically clunky piece of software where we had to upload every individual curriculum statement, and then we had to tag it with like whatever it was kind of related to, and at some point it would show you a curriculum, a huge database, right? It would take a head of department like 2 hours just to put one module of work up there, right? And no one's got that time. No one's got, even on 50% timetable, it's like no one's got that time to do that, and it's arduous. It's not particularly gratifying work. It's horrific, right? You could spend the time just planning awesome lessons, talking to your primary colleagues, having a chat with your primary colleagues, right? And then going back to your classroom. But I mean, when the AI can do that for you, just using the existing documentation, why not, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's been
I
superb.
totally agree. And I like, I was looking at that curriculum review to say, are they saying the same things? And ultimately, yes, right? They think they need to review the volume of content in primary because teachers are struggling to cover that content with sufficient depth, which affects pupils' ability to master those foundational concepts, which ultimately then has an impact on those children in year 2 going into Key Stage 3. And so my hope, I guess, is that since the review is saying the same thing as we're saying as professionals, and I've got a lot of time for, it's Becky Drake, isn't it? I think who's been commissioned to do it.
Becky Francis,
she knows Becky Francis, thank you.
Yeah.
She knows what it's talking about, and working with teachers through all of this. We need to get this knowledge-rich offer right. We need to be preparing children for these stages. We need to be making sure that actually it keeps pace with society as well, though. Like the things you're just saying about AI absolutely could transform the curriculum for us as teachers, but maybe it needs to inform what that curriculum looks like as well. Like, and as we develop new things, so as computing, for example, changes and has more digital skills, well, rather than us all starting totally apart, could we start by working together? Could you know what I mean? Like, as things are changing, in history, for example, is a great one of kind of what's constantly changing. The RE curriculum constantly changes because we all have locally agreed syllabuses, which you're probably pleased to stay out of. But because it's always interesting what that looks like. But ultimately, as we move forward with these things, we need to get better and be making the improvements so that we're not still sat here in another 5-10 years time going, yeah, still rubbish, isn't it? That transition. Or do we have bridging units that are literally designed in that summer term, post SATs, that all year 6 children are going to that secondary or with those local secondaries agreement are doing, so that actually they've got that evidence and that information, and it's really clear what that looks like. I don't know.
I think it looks look, effective retrieval will be superb, right? Like it's a problem with our curriculums in secondary as well, right? We've got Key Stage 3 is called the lost years by Ofsted. Can you believe that? Like because they redo a load of content and then we do some filler, and then we get to Key Stage 4 and we're like, right, we're going to teach cells again, everyone, right? And I think that's a crime, getting it to year. I think that's a crime. Getting to year 10.
Too
having
long,
to,
isn't it? Yeah.
having to teach kids what cells are again. That's mad. This. It's insane. It's a crime. And like I hear it, and it's become like norm. It's become commonplace. Well, they did cells in year 7, and I taught them again. I asked them what a cell was in year 10, and they couldn't tell me. And it's like, yeah, did you ask them what cells were like?
With
Once
no
a month?
context, with no.
Yeah. No, but did you ask what cells were once a month? And for your definition, of what a cell was once a month, like every month till year 10. No. Oh right. Well, how did you expect them to remember it then? Because like you've got you're fighting this like evolutionary like behavior, the evolutionary trait that we've got, which is to forget knowledge if we don't use it. Right? It's like, so do you know it? But it's become commonplace. It has become commonplace. You hear loads of teachers saying it on a day-to-day basis. Now let's amplify that to a primary context, right? If we teach them about heating and cooling in year 4, and then don't ask them about it again, like periodically, until like I do energy with them in year 7 term 2, right? And we do temperature and stuff like that in year 7 term 2. Like, of course they're not going to remember it, and of course I'm going to get really frustrated and go, what are these primary colleagues doing? Do you know what I mean? And like then reteach it. It's even if I know the key stage 2 primary curriculum there, right, I might end up reteaching it, just assuming that they've forgotten it. And unless I know that we've got I'm talking across the schools, because I don't want to blame primary and I don't want to blame secondary, but unless I know that we've got a strategy for remembering that information across the 2 schools, then I can't trust it. Do you know what I mean? I can't trust that they'll know that, and I can't move on. And I'm going to build knowledge on, like, I remember Adam Robbins went and saw a talk, and he made this really, really nice diagram with these little triangles, and the foundation of the triangle, if it's not all locked into place, then the rest of the triangles you put on top just topple in, right? And that's essentially what you're doing if like retrieval is no. So I can see the argument for reteaching content in year 7, right? I can see the argument for it. I can see do you know what I mean? Because like maybe a lot of people are finding the base isn't solid, and I'm not blaming anyone here, but that's on all of us. That's on all of us. Really, what we should have is a consistent set of question banks and a retrieval strategy that runs through from like maybe not year 1, but like year 4.
But exactly.
Like,
at the end of year 2, they should still remember it in year 4. At the end of year 4, they need to remember in year 6. Like, so we've started building up, assessment banks that effectively go, right, what did you do last week? What did you do last month? What did you do last term? So they're actually regularly at the start of it. They're not just recalling in the wider subjects like geography, history, science. They're not just recalling that topic. They are being pushed to think about, and what about last time you looked at something related to this? Like what they learn about plants develops hugely as they go through the school, right from reception all the way up to year 6. But unless we keep getting them to label a plant, they will forget that stuff.
It's mad, isn't it? It's mad. It's mad that people just expect these kids to remember stuff for like years and years and years, having never seen the information again. Like it seems like I say it's mad, but that's because like I do understand, like I do read around what it looks like, and like I was listening to Carl Hendrick earlier on, like talk about the science of learning, and it is counterintuitive at times. You think people think of memory like I'm quoting him. People think of memory like a photocopier, or not photocopier, but like just a drawer that you put stuff in, or a tape recorder. It's not. You have to. It's iterative. You need to reuse it, and then when you understand that, then we see why transition breaks down, and why secondary teachers are frustrated with primary colleagues. Do you know what I mean? And it's not it's not the right placing of that frustration. They should be frustrated with themselves for not taking question banks from primary and going, because primary are doing it. Do you know what I mean? Primary are doing retrieval, or should be taking those banks. Imagine if my feeder schools passed us the question banks for science that they were using in terms of retrieval. Last week, last month, last year, I got that information. I got a spreadsheet with those on. Oh my God. Imagine how well I could dovetail that.
Need a smarter way to teach? Wish your lessons had more impact? Eduflix.com. Stream educational films for teachers and students in or out of the classroom. Keep students engaged. No ads, no distractions. Try it free for 30 days at eduflix.com/try. Use code TTR. Get 50% off all orders made before June 1st. eduflix.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Imagine
how well
AI to do the hard work for you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
To take that and turn that into something that you could then use powerfully.
Yeah, that would be superb, wouldn't it? Right? I just get and that's simple. That's doable. That's manageable. That's something that you guys have already got. Yeah. And you just feed that forward. You just drop it in a OneDrive, or you email it across, and then and if the format is standardized, then you can have your own curriculum. But I just know from like question answer what you've taught them, and then what I do is I go, right, kids, well you did this in primary. How do you know that, sir? Well, I've got the question banks that you used in your last retrieval in year 6,
Yeah.
But
that's what's crucial here.
Mm.
They need to know, children need to know that you've had that communication and therefore expectation is set. Because we get this every year when they change classes, they think their teacher's not taught to their previous teacher, but they very quickly realise they do, and that relationship is there and there's no point pretending because they'll quickly go and find out if they are pulling a fast one. I think they start secondary and they think, oh, I can get away with just pretending I don't know any of this, but actually if secondary staff had that mentality and that attitude of, oh no, I know you did this in year 6, because I know that when we talk to year 6 teachers, these are the questions that were used in your schools, it just raises that bar, raises that expectation, which I think is probably sometimes primary school's frustration.
But the problem is, I think quite often we know what we want to achieve, but I'm going to get really bean counter here, but we don't appreciate like the organizational complexity that then we have to build that into. So like a primary school, like all your colleagues, right? And then secondary school, you might not. Like there might be some people in the building that I work with, I don't know their names. Like I should do. But, do you know what I mean? But it could be like that. It could be like that. If the new colleague joined a department somewhere, I might not know that person for about 6 or 7 months, right? Because of the nature of who I am, I generally find out who it is, blah, blah, blah. But there could be like colleagues who I don't find out the names of. I never talk to them. I could work there for 5 years. I might never talk to a colleague across the department. So then the organization structures get massive, don't they? And then you've got like many feeders going into one secondary. So I think that's the issue. You've got to think about, if you're going to do this thinking, you need to take that additional organizational complexity into account. So there's got to be a good mechanism for having that, either a conversation or for sharing that information. At the moment, that's what we miss. Like quite often what I hear with transition is, oh yeah, you should spend some time with your year 6 teachers. And then I email out, and I have done this at head of department, I'm not gonna lie, I email out to a few year 6 teachers, do you want to do some transition work? Or they email me and I'm like, I'm really sorry. They're like, oh, I can do Thursday afternoon. I've got year 11 intervention. Okay. Well, we could do Friday next week. Oh, yeah. Well, I've now got year 10. Okay, I can do Monday. Oh, no. Well, we've got this. Do you know what I mean? So then you've got these organizational issues. And like, if you've got 6 feeders, you got to make, you've then got like every head of department meeting with those 6 feeders. So that's like hundreds of meetings, right? Yeah. That's 115 heads of department meeting with 6 people. We're into tens of meetings.
Yeah, and those year 6 teachers have got to meet with each of them, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly. So then it amplifies for those year 6 teachers. So there's that whole organizational madness. So like quite often people just say, oh yeah, go and email your feeders. You're never gonna be able to do it with all of them. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's not gonna happen. Like people's calendars are too busy. People have got too much work to do to have like 35 meetings, 40 meetings in the summer term.
Let me push this a slightly different direction then.
Yeah.
Today, I got an email from Department for Education, which subject which I thought was quite relevant, information about data we're sharing with secondary schools to support year 6 and year 7 transition.
Yeah.
Do you know what this is about?
No, go on.
Okay, so this is about attendance.
Okay,
so
attendance data.
This is because the government care enough about attendance and absence rates, and because they recognise that attendance gets worse from that transition to year 6 to year 7. So the likelihood of dropping, because they band it constantly, so you know how many children you've got in different bands of absences.
Yeah.
The likelihood of those who are in that kind of 0 to 10 getting back down or staying in that down category and not moving up a category massively increases when they go to secondary school. So because they know the impact of attendance on attainment and mental health and well-being, you know, they are now across every secondary school sharing information from their year 6 year, including attendance or authorised absence, overall attendance, persistent attendance, severe attendance, which they are obviously there. Like for us, that's fine, right? I can send them that data. We give it to the DfE and they can share that with them.
Yeah.
But for secondaries, that's suddenly a huge amount of information for them to be expected to take on and do something with, right?
Yeah. Like,
that's massive in terms of for secondaries to, and I guess part of it is pre-armed is pre-warned. You know who your kind of children that you're going to be monitoring or flagging or aware of. You know, if they were bad at primary, they're potentially going to be worse with us. You know, but when the DfE care about this transition and getting it right, they can move mountains to do this kind of stuff. If they cared enough about getting Key Stage 3 right, we could formalize across the country strategies and ways of doing things and transforming the curriculum to get this right and make a difference.
Yes.
It's whether there's that passion and drive, and I guess we will wait and see what comes out of the kind of overall curriculum review, certainly at primary. And are there already thoughts and plans for how that will then impact into Key Stage 3? Because you hope there will be.
Yeah, but I have a feeling it will be like, and over to you guys. I have a feeling that's going to, because that's generally what happens, because DfE realised that then it requires more money for more heads on the idea, etc., etc., etc. So you've just got a captive market of people who've got a vested interest. Like, so over to you guys, right? And then we'll measure. Like, that's generally what's come in the past, right? Which is problematic. Like, look, there's a training need there, isn't it? Straight away when you said that, like our pastoral leads then have a training need. Head of year 7, like everyone involved in transition has then got a training need with that data. And if the DfE just simply share the data and don't provide any training around it, or any tools to mine that information effectively, well then like it's over to you guys. That's part of the issue, I think.
And I mean, like they've massively, don't get me wrong, to give DfE the credit.
Yeah, it's cool.
I know they won't be listening, right? They're doing the right thing, and they've invested massively in the tools behind it, because we used to buy in a different service just to look at our attendance data to get the information we needed to provide. We don't need to pay for that anymore, because the DfE toolkit on attendance is genuinely really good and helpful, and you can get information easily out of it. And secondaries, I'm sure, have access to that same information. It will just be another tab on that which looks at their, you know, incoming year 6s effectively. So they'll have that information, but there is still a training need of what are you going to do with that information? How are you going to make that information make a difference?
It's the whole thing, you know, when it comes to assessment, it's great collecting data. If you're not going to do anything with it, what's the point, right? So it's and giving that data. So that's the issue. We should probably do an ad, Claire, because let's go there. Okay, so have you subscribed to our weekly news yet? It's letter yet? It's called Soundbites and Insights, and it's delivered to 10,000 educators a week. It contains a curated selection of 4 standout TTR shows from the week, exclusive discounts, and exclusive offers from our sponsors. Sign up on our website at ttrradio.org/newsletter. This show is brought to you in partnership with John Cat Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncatbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Right, we're back in. Should we go about 5 minutes over? I reckon we can get 5 minutes over.
I reckon we started 5 minutes late.
Technological difficulties. So technical difficulties. Like it's great. I love the fact they're doing that, right? But once again, you can't just go over to teach. I think part of this drives me insane with like what we do. Some people don't realize the organizational difficulties when it comes to sharing this sort of content, this sort of information, and there's easy solves. There are, maybe I'm being naive. I feel like there's easy solves, right? Like for example, if you want to share curriculum, there should be an area made to do it, right? Like it's a case of drive storage, and then you can train people with the IO. I think the more difficult thing is training people to do it correctly and effectively. I also have sympathies with
in trusts, right? Because if you're in a trust, there's often people who've got responsibility for curriculum, and there's often people who are working across both the secondary and primary schools. Now, I say that I've only ever worked in primary, only maths, so there's my disclosure out the way. But the secondary that we feed into has a primary school in their trust just up the road. So if they decided we're going to base our year 7 curriculum on our feeder primary, our trust primaries year 6 curriculum, do you know I'd be okay with that? Because you know what else I'd be okay with? Having a look at their core knowledge, core overview, and going, right, what do I need to do to adapt my curriculum? I'm not going to change my whole curriculum, but I bet there's easy, simple ways that I can make sure that at the end of each topic, the questions that I'm assessing the children on are very similar to the questions they are, because even if we use a different scheme, we're still teaching the national curriculum, and we've all got that as our bare minimum expectation.
One job. I think that's the key. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, and ultimately, if the secondary was really clear, in year 7, this is where we're starting from. And, so we have feeder heads meetings that all the primary heads go to. They're really well attended. They're a really good group of people. And we could all sit around and go, yeah, do you know what? I'm up with that. Let's make sure that when year 6 leave us, they're really clear with this, so that when they go to, because we're lucky, I don't know if lucky is the right word, but compared to some schools, we mainly feed into one secondary. Now, there's lots of schools that feed into that. It's a big secondary, but most of our children go to our feeder school. Someone replied to my tweet earlier in the week, went, yeah, our primary goes to 20 different
Yes, I saw that.
We haven't really got one main feeder. And I'm like, yeah, you can't go to 20 feeder heads meetings. And I absolutely get that. But there's different challenges for different places. But even if we were just getting it right for a proportion of those children, surely that's better than getting it right for none.
Yeah. It's difficult, isn't it? And also, I think there's one angle to this. It's probably too late to throw this in, but I'll leave it hanging there. I also think our fight for autonomy, makes this even harder, right? Sometimes we are so het up with autonomy over our curriculum, not being told what to teach and how to teach it, etc. Sometimes that makes it even more difficult. That's because sometimes we are fiercely protective over our curriculum because we designed it and blah blah blah, and and our autonomy, and we I think that makes it even more difficult because then people don't have that one job mentality. Do you know what I mean? We've got our curriculum. Why am I going to adjust it because of what your primary is doing, or likewise the other way? We've got our curriculum. Why am I going to adjust it because of what your secondary is doing? I think that makes the job more difficult, and sometimes isn't helpful. We do need autonomy. I'll never say that everyone should just teach the same curriculum. It has its benefits, resourcing, things like that. But
well, once upon a time we did.
Yeah.
When I started teaching in primary, we had QCA units. Okay, and every school in the country, when they taught year 2 history, did the Great Fire of London, and there was sets of lessons and resources that every school across the country used. There was a national curriculum that was down to that level. And I agree. I think we've progressed. And actually, the school I was at then didn't teach the Great Fire of London for many years, just because there was almost a freedom, we don't have to. And actually, I love teaching the Great Fire of London. Like, it's been nice to go back to, like, no, freedom doesn't mean we're not allowed to teach those things. It means we make the right choices for us. And, you know, so when I did my MPQ EL, executive leadership, we looked a lot at this kind of spectrum of autonomy to, and it's 9 o'clock at night, so I've forgotten the word. The opposite of autonomy.
Prescription,
where everyone
prescription.
is doing exactly. Where everyone's doing prescriptive, everyone's doing the same thing. And, you know, you can look at it from different people's perspective, but there's definitely a middle balance there that still allows teachers to feel like they are empowered to teach effectively, but still allows for that consistency and effectiveness that everyone benefits from.
It's a false dichotomy, like prescription versus autonomy, when it comes to these things. Like, I think we can have both. we don't need, they're not mutual. I think, sorry, I just meant to say they're not mutually exclusive. We can have both. Like, we can have a level of prescription so that we've got consistency, and then there's areas of autonomy where it's appropriate. But I think that just made it even harder. Like, for example, like if your feeder schools are relying on you to teach the Great Fire in London and you don't, that's really hard. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's really hard. If I'm relying on someone to teach like plant biology, we're using specific vocabulary, and it doesn't happen because of autonomy, then I'm really struggling there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm having to redo. So I think the autonomy thing, like, I don't know. In some ways, we've got the classic swing where we swing one direction, and then we'll probably swing back in the opposite direction. Hopefully, well, I don't know whether we'll probably swing. I've just said that without really but maybe we'll swing back in the opposite direction, and hopefully we'll land somewhere which is reasonable, where it makes all this a lot easier. But I can definitely see, like, I will be using a lot more AI to make the transition a lot easier for everyone involved. I think that's a huge thing, and I think one thing I will be doing is maybe fielding out to feeder primaries, getting their curriculum documents when it comes to science. Just like, send me over. I don't need anything. Like, if you haven't got one, then you probably should have one. But just jot it down on a Word document. We can work with that. Do you know what I mean? Even if it's just one side of a Word document, like showing what you do year 1 to year 3, cool. Like, but just sling it over, and then I'll bung it into my AI, and we'll just kind of see what consistency and differences we get, and then I can accommodate for that, like, somewhere down the line. I think that is a awesome thing.
And you know what? There's no reason we couldn't do the same in reverse.
Yeah.
So there is no reason that when I'm reviewing our curriculum next, I don't go, right, I know which feeder school my children are going to. Let me have a look at what their Key Stage 3 curriculum looks like. Or their Year 7 curriculum looks like. And I could do exactly the same thing. And go, right, can I add on to my overview just a kind of next steps where they're going? So that actually my teachers have got that, and it's interesting. So I've literally got it up now, because genuinely, you saying that to me is going, well, yeah, that's fine, but actually I could do the same. Like, I could take our curriculum and do it with the Year 7 curriculum and see, and actually what it says on their one is what they will learn, what they've learned before, where you can read more. Like, and actually in every single step it goes through that in Year 7, and I'm looking at each of those and going, I know exactly where that's taught. And actually, that also gives me the way to be able to engage with the school and say, right, where do we go with this?
And in doing that, like, you might see,
actually,
you might go,
move this together.
You might go, I can't teach it. You know, people are always talking about how little curriculum time they have. You might go, oh, I can hang on a second. That's a Key Stage 3 national curriculum statement, and they're teaching it there. We'll just get rid of that. Do you know what I mean? We can have some breathing time to really focus on what we've got. So you could do a bit of that in primaries as well. It's, I think, that bare minimum. So that's like my bronze award idea, where I think it's easy to implement, easy to do. I think my gold award idea would be retrieval, which are consistent across.
No, I like it. I think it's really
like,
yeah.
It's good. Yeah, that would be my gold award. That would be like,
look, I think
like the Fix It award. You know,
we've,
I think
we've come to a good point there to hit pause.
Yeah. Right. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Let me have a look when we're back next. Remember, we're on the second
really good,
Wednesday of the
I've
month.
enjoyed that conversation a lot. I think it's been good.
Really enjoyed that. Loads of takeaways. So we're back on June 11th.
Yes.
I think. So we're back on June 11th. We hope to see you.
But yeah.
I always get confused. Yeah. So June 11th, we're the second Wednesday of the month, 8 p.m.
Perfect.
June 11th. Yeah. And we'll
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.